Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, as we gather to study these words that you've given to your prophet Daniel and begin to see your capability to control history, Lord, let us be able to put forth the effort today to watch you in action. It is just amazing to see how accurately you predict things, Lord, and how reassuring this is to see you predicting this future for Daniel, but past for us, allows us to be certain for which future for us in the coming end times that you have said would take place. And Lord, although tribulation is coming our way, you have guaranteed the victory through the second coming of Jesus Christ. Lord, this gives us the assurance we need. This is for us, Lord. This is to show us you are in control, that you are worthy, that you are sovereign, and that your hand controls all things. Lord, let us learn. Lord, bring to my remembrance everything that I've studied. Allow me to convey it in an understandable way. Allow those that are here to be illuminated by the Holy Spirit, and let us enjoy watching your plan unfold. For your name we pray, Master. Amen.
Amen.
Now we are in Daniel 11. And we are breaking in the last part of Daniel 11. And how I handled this the other night was, I remind you a couple things. One, key, huge. Remember this. This is not a history class. This is a prophecy class. Remember, for Daniel, he's looking into the future about all these events. So when we look back and we read it, we have the hindsight capability to see how accurate God can predict things. This has to encourage us. This has to motivate us. And why this is important, because it will cut over in verse 36 forward to the Antichrist. And when it does, it's going to show you things about the Antichrist and what he's going to do, primarily how he himself will consider himself a divine figure, how he himself will stand opposed to Jesus Christ, how he himself will be military might, and how he himself will seemingly at first be unstoppable. All of these things God has already laid out, and all of these things we can see in the study of Revelation as well. Now what we've got to understand is there's a typological figure that we're going to study today that prefigures the Antichrist, named Antiochus IV. Okay? Remember him. And for you guys that were here Wednesday, this will be going back over. But you've got to understand this time and see if it recollects and brings back to your memory. Okay? Now Daniel is writing, remember, he is writing still in Persia about 536, 535 BC. We know that from Daniel 10. Because remember, 539 is when Babylon beat Persia, and he said it's the third year of Cyrus, so we're at 536, 535 range, okay? So Daniel is looking forward. We've already seen him predict Persia, Alexander the Great, and now we're getting into the Diadochi and the division of their empires, and how it's going to lead to the final Diadochi member, the great persecutor of the Jews, Antiochus IV. All right, so this is what we're working towards. Antiochus is going to be seen in verse 21 through 35. He has the primary goal in history of Hellenization. Who remembers what that means? Greeks. Very good. He wants to bring Greek culture, Greek religion, unify all this territory with Greek ideals at the expense, for the first time ever, of saying no to other religions. Particularly, this is going to oppose the Jews, who at first they'll go, yeah, we like the idea of becoming Greek. We like all this stuff. But in the end, what's going to happen is going to have to go against the Old Testament and their overall beliefs. Okay? So they're going to have to stand opposed. You're going to be forced either to be pro-Hellenization or pro-Old Testament covenant. You're going to have to choose, just like in the end times. You're going to have to choose between following this world, the Antichrist, and keeping your life, having economic stability, or being pro-Christ, losing your life, and being economically persecuted, imprisoned, and killed. This is foreshadowing all this. This is why this is so important. Keep that in mind, okay? Now this guy, Antiochus IV, he had two names. Remember this, okay? One was Epiphanes, which means what? Epiphanes, it means what? God manifests. Okay? So he thought of himself as what? A God in the flesh. Although those who are around him made a play on his name and called him Madman, which possibly plays on the fact that he dies more than likely of insanity. Okay? So it's very possible at the end of his life, when he does die, that he is simply handed over to the demonic forces that empowered him throughout his career. This is all going to be very possible, okay? So you need to know Antiochus IV today. You also need to know what's going on. Well, that's going to be the king of the north. And now we're going to look at what's going on with the king of the south. What nation is the king of the south?
Egypt.
It's Egypt. And what empire is this?
Ptolemy.
Ptolemaic Empire, right? Now what we need to see with the Ptolemaic Empire, what's going on with them right now? Well, they got 3 sibling co-regents, okay? 3 sibling co-regents means they're related to each other, and they're going to be ruling different parts of the Egyptian kingdom. The main one's going to be a guy named Ptolemy VI. Philo Mater. What do we say that means? Philo Mater. Philo, love. Mater, mother. Very good. So what does that mean? What's his name mean?
Mother lover.
Mother lover or mama's boy. Okay? He is going to be ruling with his sister wife, Cleopatra II. Okay? And they're going to have their younger brother, Ptolemy VIII, whose name is Sychon. Okay? Which means fatty or potbelly. Why is he called fatty or potbelly? Because he's fat. Okay? See, you're getting it now, all right? So we got mama's boy, sister wife, and fat boy. Okay? So they're all together. They're going to be ruling Egypt, the Ptolemaic Empire. In the midst of this, you're going to have a Jewish uprising led by the Maccabees. Okay? The Hasmonean family, we will see them a little later. Just know they're going to come up. Liberals think it was written after the fact, and they're not predicted. But if you know that Daniel knows how to predict the future, you know they are predicted. And you know they are going to be the ones who inevitably reinstall traditional Judaism. They're going to be the ones who set up a kingdom, really, that's going to be pretty fairly the size of David and Solomon, and pretty fairly on God's side until about 63 BC when the Romans come in with Pompey. And once the Romans take over, things go downhill for the Jews at that point, okay? But they're going to reinstall this whole empire. So, we got the king of the north, who's going to be who? Antiochus IV. The king of the south is going to be Ptolemy VI, but he's got a triage with his siblings. Sister, wife, and fat boy. Keep all that in mind, okay? We can follow all this, right? All right. We got to get these lead-in events quickly, and they're going to go back to events that happened in Daniel 11, 17 through 20 that led to Antiochus IV. I hope you know these by now. For those that have been here every time, this will be the 3rd or 4th time I've mentioned them, so I should be able to look at you and you get these by now, okay? So we got to go to Daniel 11, 17. Oh, excuse Kris. It's only his first time for this, I think. But Daniel 11, 17. The political marriage were Antiochus III, Antiochus Megos. His name is Antiochus III Megos, which means what?
The
great. Just like Cyrus and Alexander, Antiochus III was the great, the daddy of Antiochus IV. We've got to see his career really quickly move forward because it's going to open the door for his son. So remember, Daniel 11, 17. This is going to be important because it is going to be the political marriage that is going to birth the kings of the south during the time of Antiochus' reign. Okay? Read for us Daniel 11, 17.
He shall set his face to come of the strength of his whole kingdom, and he shall bring terms of an agreement and perform them. He shall give him the daughter of women to destroy the kingdom, but it shall not stand or be his advantage.
Remember, this is when Antiochus III pretty much taken over the eastern world. He is ruling, dominating at this point in time. And he gives his daughter, Cleopatra I, to the king of the south, Ptolemy V, to form a political alliance in hope that she will spy in favor of him. Now, how old are the kids at this point? Remember?
10.
They're 10 and 16. So although he wants his daughter to spy, what does she end up doing?
Falling in love.
Falling in love with a 16-year-old. So this whole political alliance falls apart, okay? Does not work. It's the first chink in the armor for Antiochus the Great. Next, we got the rise of Robo-Beast from Daniel 7. Who is Robo-Beast? Who we say that was? Rome. We got Rome on the scene here. Remember them. Read verse 18 for us.
Afterward he shall turn his face to the coastlands and shall capture many of them. But a commander shall put an end to his insolence. Indeed, he shall turn his insolence back upon him.
He is Antiochus III. The coastlands are the islands near Greece and Thrace. The commander is going to be Rome, particularly Scipio at this point in time. Who, when Antiochus comes on in, he says, turn back around. But what does Antiochus say? Nah, I don't know you. I don't know Rome. I mean, we can look back at Rome and go, what? That's Rome. But when he heard of Rome, he goes, what? I never heard of you before. You're looking down to me. You're nothing. You're nobody, okay? I'm the king of the East. I got a large army. You know, you're a startup empire. Well, this arrogance will be his downfall. He's going to lose 2 battles, Thermopylae and Magnesia. He's going to be forced to sign an agreement that bankrupts him. And his son, the main figure we're going to today, Antiochus IV, is going to be taken prisoner and basically grows up in Rome because of this. This is all going to be huge. The key thing here is this treaty is going to destroy Antiochus III is going to lose territory, pay billions, lose his naval fleet and his elephant corps. Things are going to go down for him. He was king of the world, not anymore. God predicted all this. Remember, this is predicted. I mean, if he had just had Daniel sitting in front of him, he'd have known to turn around and leave for Rome to begin with. Okay? This is all happening before this happens. This is not history, this is prophecy. Keep all that in mind, okay? Now verse 19.
Then he shall turn his face back toward the fortresses of his own land, but he shall stumble and fall and shall not be found.
Okay? He's got to pay a ton of money to the Romans. So what he begins is a looting expedition. Where? Back in his own territory. So he goes back in his own territory and he begins looting the temples. And one day he's looting a temple near Susa, this temple of Zeus, okay? And when he's doing it, these citizens go, nope, we're not going to have it. Well, you know, you can do what you want to do, but don't touch our holy land. And they kill him. And he dies this kind of nobody death. He was the king of the world, and he becomes a nobody, and the Bible predicts it. Just kind of like that. He just kind of falls off the scene. He shall stumble and fall and shall not be found. Just kind of this slow death there. Nothing big about it. Just falls off there. That's what happens to him during his looting attack. Well, this is going to open the door for his oldest son. First, we've got to read him in verse 20. He's Seleucus IV Philopater. What does Philopater mean? Philopater is mother lover. What's Philopater?
Brother lover.
Father lover. So he's a daddy's boy, like Esau. Remember that. Good guess. That would be Philadelphus, by the way. Good guess. So Seleucus IV Philopater, the first son, is going to be mentioned here in verse 20. Read that for us.
Then shall arise in his place one who shall send exactor tribute for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he shall be broken, neither in anger nor in battle.
He will just have this short 12-year reign, known for two major things. He's going to be known for having to pay tribute to Rome and send people into tax, and he's known for being assassinated, okay? What's interesting about this is, one who shall rise in his place, in his daddy's place, Seleucus IV, who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom, or the jewel of the kingdom, some translations. This is predicting his attempt to send his prime minister in to plunder the Jerusalem temple. Now we know from sources this doesn't happen. And just because Dennis loves these stories, we're going to read one of these accounts that happens here. This is when the prime minister is going to raid the temple, but God sends some heavenly destroyer angels onto the scene and stops the whole thing. Now this is based on an extra-biblical account. We can't be 100% certain, but why we're reading this is connected to this guy, and this lets you know extra-biblical ideas about angels, where they come from. Kind of lets you see it, okay? We're going to be reading two books today. We're going to be reading 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees. 1 Maccabees is very historically accurate, although with a Jewish slant. 2 Maccabees, you can't always believe everything it says. At one point it says Jeremiah comes back and helps the Maccabean revolt. So you can't believe it all. However, although this one comes from 2 Maccabees 3, it gives you a little picture of Jewish angelology and how they perceive things in spiritual war. Okay? Jacynda, read for us 2 Maccabees 3. When this guy sends his tax collector to go plunder the temple in Jerusalem, here is how the Maccabean account talks about angels stopping him. Read that for us.
Heliodorus planned on looting the temple, but at the very moment that he and his bodyguards arrived at the treasury, the Lord of all supernatural powers caused such a vision to appear that everyone who had dared to enter was panic-stricken and was weak with fear at this display of the Lord's power. In the vision they saw a horse and a rider. The horse had a richly decorated bridle, and its rider, dressed in gold armor, was frightening. Suddenly the horse rushed at Heliodorus, then reared up and struck at him with its hoofs.
Start right there. So you've got a spiritual horse and rider. These are destroyer angels. Starts out with that, okay? So we got this idea of the destroyer angel coming on this guy. Now we're going to have two other angels show up. And they're going to do more than just scare him. They're going to beat him senseless. Okay, so let's keep going.
Heliodorus also saw two unusually strong and handsome young men wearing very fine clothes. They stood on either side of him and beat him unmercifully.
So you got two. Remember what I told you? Angels, you said really handsome, really strong. You got that there. And what do these two angels do to him? They just thumped him. Very good. They thumped him was what they did. They just beat him and beat him and beat him. And then he falls to the ground unconscious. And in the end, he thinks he's going to plunder the temple, but he gets carried out on a stretcher unconscious. Okay? That is the story that is behind this verse right here in Jewish tradition. So this is a huge, big story behind this verse. That's all we know about that guy, this Seleucus IV, daddy lover. We know that he was a tax collector trying to pay off the Romans. We know that he was assassinated by Heliodorus in the end. And we know that his attempt to plunder the temple failed because of angelic intervention. Now we get to the the typological Antichrist himself, Antiochus IV. If you got a little line in your Bible, you can write there beside verse 21, kind of start right there, and it's going to go down to verse 35, and we're going to see this guy's career. I am not going to go into all the details. I am going to skip anything that I think is unnecessary just so you can see just more about this guy in general. Just so you can watch how he acts. Because remember, how he acts is going to be like how who acts? The Antichrist. This is what you're going to see. And remember, this is all predicted for Daniel. This is not him writing history. This is him writing prophecy. Keep all that in mind. Read for us verse 21.
In his place shall arise a contemptible person to whom royal majesty has not been given. He shall come in without warning and obtain the kingdom by flatteries.
So we're going to emphasize here, this guy's going to be lacking honor and lacking legitimacy. He's a contemptible person. Well, that's a good way to describe someone who foreshadows the Antichrist. He's a monster from the Jewish perspective. That's the first thing we hear about this guy. You know something's bad about him. Who royal majesty has not been given. Was he the rightful heir to the throne? No. Who was? His nephew, Demetrius. Demetrius was sent over to Rome at this point. He gets free. He comes over. He will obtain his kingdom by flatteries. How is he going to take over Syria? By military might? No. By opportunity and smooth talk. It's going to be a little help from the king of Pergamum, but in the end, he don't do anything except show up and get the kingdom, basically. Okay? There's a few things here and there, but it's just a bunch of opportunity and smooth talk. Just like the Bible says. All right? Now, verse 22 and 24, they go together. If there's anything in here, there's any kind of division on, it's this. Everyone agrees it's talking about Antiochus IV. What events it's talking about a little division on. I'm just, instead of confusing you, I'm just going to give you my opinion on it, okay? You might hear others when you read the commentaries, and that's okay. We're not certain exactly which events this refers to, but these are key events about him that I think is going to be more of a general summary statement, and I think it's going to talk about something very important, and that is his role in the high priesthood of Jerusalem, okay? Read for us verse 22 through 24.
Armies shall be utterly swept away before him and broken, even the prince of the covenant. And from that time that an alliance is made with him, he shall act deceitfully, and he shall become strong with a small people. Without warning he shall come into the richest parts of the province, and he shall do what neither his fathers nor his fathers' fathers have done, scattering among them plunder, spoil, and goods. He shall devise plans against strongholds, but only for a time.
Now, I would go into all this, and I really could. I had originally planned on it, but I decided, just for the sake of time, just to kind of give you a quick summary here, okay? What this more than likely is not worried about chronological order. It's this broad sweeping statement about his reign in general. We're going to see the Prince of the Covenant, which has to do with the Jewish high priest, and then it's going to go back in 23 and 24 and kind of describe his initial takeover of Syria. We're not going to worry about any of that. We're just going to look at verse 22 right here, okay? Armies shall be utterly swept away before him. The him is Antiochus IV. Who are the armies that are swept away? This is going to predict the 6th Syrian war with Ptolemy and the Egyptians when Antiochus wins. The Prince of the Covenant. Now think about this, okay? When we talk about a covenant in the Old Testament, who are we normally referring to? Yahweh, the people of Israel. Now we got a Prince of the Covenant here, so we don't have a king. So who would be next in line that could be considered over the covenant as far as humans would go? The high priest, okay? So the Prince of the Covenant is going to talk about his role in intervening when he sells the high priesthood. Okay? You're going to start out with a guy named Onias III. He's the rightful high priest. He's a good guy. He's tradition. He's about the law of Moses. Tradition says he didn't allow wickedness. He read the Old Testament all the time. He was a true supporter of Yahweh. Well, his brother, Jason, well, there's a good thing. You hear of Jason? I don't know if Jason even existed back in those days. But you got Jason, his brother. He comes up and he buys the priesthood from Antiochus IV. Now, Jason is pro-Hellenization, which means gymnasiums, but he's also pro-traditional Jewish worship, which means he is synchronistic. Remember? He's going to combine Hellenism with Judaism. You can't do that. That's wrong. So he's bad right there. And he buys the priesthood. So now we've got the priesthood under the authority of the state. That's going to be the Antichrist time too. I mean, that's what's going to happen. The church coming under the authority of the Antichrist, the state itself. That's what we're going to see. But what happens to Jason eventually is he didn't have enough money, and someone who has more money comes along and buys it out from under him. His name is Menelaus. Menelaus is pro-Hellenization and anti-Judaism all the way together. So in the end, you're going to end up with a high priest who is pro-Greek, anti-Old Testament teachings as your high priest. All right? This is what happens when the state government runs your religion. You have a guy who doesn't care about truth. And that's what you're going to end up with, okay? That's what that is predicted. That's how it unfolded, all right? Now what you're going to see is the 6th Syrian War, verse 25 and 26. This happens between 170 and 168 BC. This is going to be Antiochus IV's first campaign into Egypt where he wins, okay? Just keep that in mind. Read for us verse 25 and 26.
And he shall stir up his power and his heart against the kingdom of the south with a great army. And the king of the south shall wage war with an exceedingly great and mighty army. But he shall not stand, for plots shall be devised against him. Even those who eat his food shall break him. His army shall be swept away, and many shall fall down slain.
Okay, a little wordy, but that's okay. We'll make it sound as easy as we can. He shall stir. Who's the he? Well, Antiochus IV. What's he going to do? He's going to go to battle with the Egyptians near Pelusium. Okay? And then what he's going to do is he's going to take a portion of Egypt, the eastern portion known as Memphis. He's going to try to take Alexandria, almost take it, but have something happen on the way. So let's just break this down real quick. That's what we're looking at right here. Okay, the king of the south who's going to fight against. Who do we say the nation of the king of the south is?
Ptolemy.
Egypt and the who? Ptolemaic Empire. This is going to be Ptolemy VI, Mama's boy. Just keep that in mind. This is Mama's boy, okay? This is Mama boy he's fighting against here. But Mama's boy will not stand. What does that mean is going to happen to Mama's boy? He's going to get beat, okay? He's going to get beat, and what's going to happen is he's going to be defeated at Pelusium, and he's going to have to agree to either die or become Antiochus' puppet ruler. What do you think he chooses?
Die.
Puppet ruler. I will be your puppet ruler. Don't kill me. It's better to be secondary in command and a fake king than to be dead. This is the mentality he's going to have here, okay? He is going to set up his kingdom in Memphis. Not in Tennessee, where Elvis is from, but Memphis over in Africa, the Egypt range, okay? Keep that in mind. This is going to be huge, all right? What it's talking about here, even the Egyptian Ptolemaic kings, food shall break him. Well, that's talking about his advisors giving him bad advice. They recommend him to go to war and they shouldn't have. Many shall be slain is all the Egyptian military that is slaughtered at Pelusium itself, okay? At this point, the Battle of Pelusium is predicted. Ptolemy VI is predicted to be defeated, and he's predicted to become the puppet ruler of Antiochus IV. It's all predicted there. Now we've got this treaty in verse 27. Now this will become a little easier for you to see we're talking about a treaty. Okay? Listen to the language and see if you can just pick up here. This is talking about a treaty and what you think will happen in this treaty just based on the language. Read for us verse 27.
As for the two kings, their hearts shall be bent on doing evil. They shall speak lies at the same table, but to no avail, for the end is yet to be at the time appointed.
So you're going to have two kings. Who would you guess that would be? The king of the north and the king of the south. Who would you say that was? Antiochus IV and Ptolemy VI, Mama's boy. So they're going to sit together at a table. What do you picture sitting at a table? What are you normally doing? Politically speaking, making a treaty. Okay? So we see, but this treaty is going to be to no avail. What do you think is going to happen to the treaty? It's not going to work. It's going to fall apart, okay? Because in the end, it's been appointed for it to fail. What we are going to see with all this is they're going to sit down and use each other. They're going to agree to a treaty. What's going to happen is Ptolemy VI, he's going to say, okay, I'll be your puppet king, but you've got to help me beat my brother and sister, and I've got to be second command over all of Egypt if you're first. Okay, we'll do that. Okay, we've got this all planned out. This treaty will fail because what's going to happen is although they agree to terms, when Antiochus goes and invades Alexandria, he's just about to beat Alexandria. And if he wins Alexandria here, he rules all of Egypt. And if he rules all of Egypt here, he will have a good chance of taking over the world. So things are looking pretty good for him. But at the last second, he hears there's an insurrection, rebellion back in Syria, so he has to turn around and leave Egypt immediately. As soon as he leaves, do you think Ptolemy VI keeps agreeing to be his puppet ruler? No. Not at all. What happens then is these siblings get together and they say, hey, let's all of us rule again and kick this guy out all the way. So that treaty falls apart. The siblings reconcile, they turn their back, Antiochus no longer has any claim to Egypt, and we're right back where we started before all this happens. The Bible predicts all this. This is what it's talking about. All right, so we're right back where we started. Now we got verse 28.
He shall return to his land with great wealth, but his heart shall be set against the holy covenant, and he shall work his will and return to his own land.
All right. He will return to his land with great wealth. That's talking about his victories in Egypt. He might not have any territory then, but he got a lot of money out of the deal. Okay, so he does have that. He will set his heart against the holy covenants. When you hear that in Old Testament prophecy, normally who are you talking about?
Palestine.
The people of God, the Jews, Israel, one way or another, okay? And what this is talking about, this is going to be his first onslaught against Jerusalem itself. In 169 BC, he's going to have this assault where he puts down this insurrection by force and he slaughters thousands, okay? And just to teach them a lesson, he's going to go into the temple itself and rob it of all its treasures. So this guy goes in the temple and takes all of God's money from God. Okay, we've beginning to see him and this attack on Judaism unfold right here. This is going to be huge, okay? Now what we're going to see in verse 29 and 30, prediction of two things. His second invasion of Egypt and Robo-Beast come back on the scene again. Who's Robo-Beast? Rome. So keep this in mind. Verse 29 and 30, read that for us.
At the time appointed he shall return and come to the south, but it shall not be this time as it was before. For ships of Kittim shall come against him, and he shall be afraid and withdraw, and shall turn back and be enraged and take action against the holy covenant. He shall turn back and pay attention to those who forsake the holy covenant.
Now let's see if we can figure out verse 29 in a row. At this time appointed he shall return and come into the south, which means he's going to go back where? What nation was the south?
Egypt.
Back to Egypt. Second campaign into Egypt. But it will not be like it was before, meaning what? He's not going to win this time. Is that clear? Clearly says it, right? What do you think happens? He goes back to Egypt and he doesn't win. Wow. So, God has nailed that one, didn't he? All right? Well, not only does he nail that's going to happen, he nails how it happens. Because how does this guy lose? These ships of Kittim get involved. Who do you think they are? Rome. Anytime you're talking about from this area here, Kittim's going to look something come from the Mediterranean coming down this way. Okay? So we're looking at what direction Rome would have come on down. And what's going to happen is a delegation of Rome under the leadership of Pompilius Linus is going to show up and they're going to say, Antiochus, you can't come any further. Listen, we heard about what you did before. We were busy fighting the Macedonians. We had our own wars. And you almost won. But we're going to make sure that won't happen this time. Because we're here now. And Egypt has called for us. Egypt has agreed to be our puppets, not yours. You're going to leave right now. And Antiochus goes, well, I start kind of stuttering. Let me talk to my advisors. And as he's sitting there standing there, Pompilius Linus gets a stick, draws a circle in the sand, and he goes, all right, you got time to think. But the second you step out of the circle, either you leave or you die. That's your options. You can think about it, but you're going to do what we want, one way or another. This is literally recorded in history. And so he's standing in the circle and he goes, man, I got no choice. All right, I'll bow down to you. So he leaves, he is defeated, he withdraws. This is known as the Day of Eleusis in history itself, okay? This happens on a suburb of Alexandria. He turns back around in rage, which means he leaves Egypt to go back home and is going to take action against the Holy Covenant. While he has gone down to Egypt this time, this rumor gets back up in Jerusalem somehow that he had been killed in battle. And so what the Jews do, they start a civil war, led by the guy Jacynda, okay? He leads a civil war, and what happens when Antiochus shows up, he is already mad and just lost. And now he's got an insurrection taking place within his territory. He is not happy at all. He's going to squash this civil war, and he's going to put into place a pro-apostate, anti-Old Testament government that is pro-Hellenization and in favor of heretical Jews, is what he's going to set up right here. This is going to lead to some events. You've heard terminology before. This is the big one. This is the big one. The events of 167 BC. And although Antiochus himself will not be present, he is the one who gives the marching orders for all of these events to unfold. This is that one verse you've got to know out of all of this. This is that big verse. Read for us verse 31.
Forces from him shall appear and profane the temple and fortress, and shall take away the regular burnt offering, and they shall set up the abomination that makes desolate.
What do we say the abomination of desolation means? It is an act of idolatry that is worthy of death, that destroys. Okay? We've seen this term already before. We'll see this term in the New Testament as well. This is why it's prefiguring the Antichrist. Okay? What we're going to see here with him is, once forces appear, this is talking about his mercenary general, Apollonius, in his Sabbath day massacre. Okay? Why would this mercenary general attack the Jews on the Sabbath. Anybody remember what I said about that?
Because they're not going to fight on
You're
the
not going to
Sabbath.
fight on the Sabbath. Eventually, they wouldn't hear. So if you show up with a military on the Sabbath, what are your chances of winning?
Pretty good. Zero.
Yeah, well, the Jews are zero. But the guy that's going against, you're going to win one way or another. So he shows up and he slaughters about 22,000 men, and he takes all the women and children and he turns them into slaves and prisoners. Their life is destroyed. And this begins this whole ban on Judaism, profaning the temple or the sanctuary. This is going to talk about how the temple will be turned into an institution for false religion, even to the point of prostitution taking place in some of the holiest places. Just some of the worst acts of vile sin you could imagine. All right, now we've got taking away the burnt offering. This is talking about he's going to stop the offering in the temple, but it's also going to look forward to all these bans of traditional Judaism that are going to come with threats of death. And then last but not least, setting up the abomination that makes desolate. In December 167, an altar of Zeus was built in the temple made out of a sacred meteorite, and 10 days later, pigs were sacrificed on it. Now, technically, the name of this altar was to Baal Shaham, which is the Syrian version of Zeus. But the fact of the matter was, they're worshiping a false god, burning offerings to a false god in Yahweh's temple. This is the abomination that makes desolate. Now, I want to read you just quickly a few historical sources right here, okay? One about the Sabbath Day Massacre. I don't know if it's called that anywhere else. That's what I call it, because there's a lot of massacring going on here. Here is how 1 Maccabees talks about the Sabbath Day Massacre. 1 Maccabees 1:30, verse 32.
The commander spoke to the people, offering them terms of peace and completely deceiving them. Then he suddenly launched a fierce attack on the city, dealing it a major blow and killing many of the people. He plundered the city, set it on fire, and tore down its buildings and walls. He and his army took the women and children as prisoners and seized the cattle.
That's what they do in Jerusalem. They burned it. They just burned it. They didn't totally destroy the temple, but they took everything valuable they used it for their fortification. They tore down the walls. They took the valuable cattle. They slaughtered the men. They took the women and children and turned them into slaves. I mean, they're just coming an all-out attack on God's people. And on top of this begins the bans on Judaism, where they're no longer allowed to burn offering, have grain offerings or wine offerings, where they must treat the Sabbath and festivals as ordinary work days, where they built pagan altars and forced the Jews to sacrifice to pagan gods and sacrifice unclean animals. They forbid circumcision, and all of this, as well as outlawing the Old Testament and reading of the law itself, was threatened by death. Now, I want you to listen to a little section from 1 Maccabees 156 forward about this, because not only does it talk about the banning of reading of Scripture, it also talks about what happened to the mothers and the children who practiced circumcision. Listen to this. Read 1 Maccabees 56 forward.
Any books of the law which were found were torn up and burned, and anyone who was caught with a copy of the sacred books or who obeyed the law was put to death by the order of the king. Mothers who had allowed their babies to be circumcised were put to death in accordance with the king's decree. Their babies were hung around their necks, and their families and those who had circumcised them were put to death.
What's happening to anybody who's staying loyal to what Yahweh commanded of his religious followers? They're killed. What's going to happen to any Christian who stays loyal to the commands of Christ during the time of Antichrist? They're going to be slaughtered, just like this right here. I mean, there's no mercy, not even for babies. And that's what this is looking forward to. Now we've got verse 32 itself. This is going to be the division of the two groups, the good and the bad Jews. Read verse 32.
He shall seduce with flattery those who violate the covenant, but the people who know their God shall stand firm and take action.
Those who violate the covenant are going to be the apostate, heretical, pro-Hellenization Jews. The people who know their God are going to be the traditional Orthodox Jews who dedicate themselves to Yahweh in the Old Testament covenant, even if it means death. Okay? Now this is going to lead to a particular group, and this is who you've got to know about. This is the Maccabees, the Hasmonean family. You got Mattathias. He's going to be the father. He's going to die right away, though, and his son Judas is going to take it over. Remember, Judas used to be a good name. It was one of the favorite Jewish names for a while. Jewish the Hammer. You're going to have John, Simon, Eliezer, and Jonathan. Eliezer is actually going to be killed by a war elephant in battle. Most all these guys are going to be killed in battle, though. Okay? They are going to inevitably lead the Maccabean revolt, particularly Judas, and they're going to kick out this heretical group and this pro-Greek group, and they're going to rededicate the temple inevitably. And what we're going to see here is this all starts with the Modine incident. This is a place 17 miles outside of Jerusalem. What's going to happen is Antiochus IV's representatives are going to show up, this little town, and Mattathias is the priest. They're going to say, Mattathias, we will give you gold and silver and riches if you simply set the example. We're going to build this altar right here. And if you simply sacrifice to a false god just once, use your influence just once to do it, show other people that it's okay to do, and we'll give you all this wealth. All right? Well, Mattathias goes, I ain't doing that. Who are you? I am loyal to Yahweh. And he says that to him. Well, this other Jew steps forward and says, I'll take the riches, I'll do it. So he goes to sacrifice to the false god. Mattathias gets enraged, and he goes and he slaughters that Jew right then, and he turns around and he slaughters the king's representatives. So he has just now started war with Antiochus in Syria. Well, his life's as good as gone at this point. So he takes his sons, and they flee to the mountains. And in the midst of this fleeing in the mountains, they begin to train and learn how to do guerrilla warfare. And in the end, it's this guerrilla warfare and divine aid that leads to one of the greatest David and Goliath stories you just don't hear about that really, really happens. And that is how, in the end, the Maccabees themselves, using this tactic, beat back the Syrian army and beat back the pro-Hellenization Jews. There's no way they should have won these wars. And what's going to happen is once you have this Maccabean revolt take place between 167 and 164, you're going to have this ongoing warfare. And the only people that are going to help them are the Hasidim. The Hasidim are probably the ancient Pharisees. Who are the Pharisees? They're bad guys all the time, right? Not here. Here the Pharisees start out as holy warriors. Now there's a little debate if that's truly them, but more than likely it's going to be the Maccabees and the Hasidim using guerrilla warfare tactics for 3.5 long years until they finally beat back the enemy. They win these wars, where it's maybe a couple hundred of them versus several thousand of the enemy. And they win every war they fight. And eventually they're going to rededicate the temple. And they're going to basically come back in 164 BC, and they're going to set things right again. And they're going to retake over Jerusalem. And they're going to institute something known as the Feast of Dedication or Feast of Lights, which is the Jewish holiday known as what? Hanukkah. Where is this talked about in the New Testament? Who wants to guess? It's in John.
I was to say, you said John.
John what?
Was it 4?
John 10. John 10:22, the Good Shepherd discourse. So we see all this unfold itself, all right? And what this is predicted right here is how God will inevitably aid the righteous to throw out this foreshadowing type of the Antichrist, Antiochus IV, and these heretical Jews. They do it with divine aid and divine aid only. This is a miraculous victory for the people of God. And this is what we're seeing predicted is going to happen. Now read verse 33 and 34.
And the wise among the men shall make many understand, though for some days they shall stumble by sword and flame, by captivity and plunder. When they stumble, they shall receive a little help, and many shall join themselves to them with flattery.
All I want you to know is the many make understand means they're going to inevitably install more orthodox leadership, and the little help they get is God assisting or coming through holy war to win the war for them. That's what this is talking about. Now, real quickly, verse 35, because we've got to get the Antichrist parts. Verse 35.
And some of the wise shall stumble, so that they may be refined, purified, and made white, until the time of the end, for it still awaits the appointed time.
Purified, made white, get rid of the heretics. We're getting rid of the apostates. What happens? They get rid of the apostates. And we see this until the end of what? Until the end of Antiochus' persecution, which was decreed by God. So in the end, this is looking forward to the Maccabean revolt that gets rid of Antiochus IV and the apostate Jews. Things are going great, right? Yay, he gets beat. He loses. But it didn't look that way most of the time, did it? Most of the time, he seemed almost unstoppable. But one thing's for certain, he hated the people of God. And that's what we see happen. And now we're going to cut over to this other guy. This is going to begin the section on the Antichrist. It is possible verse 36 through 39 are kind of double fulfillment, where you've got things of Antiochus spoken of, but they are certainly about the Antichrist. Okay? Verse 40 through 12:3 are about the Antichrist as well. Okay? And what we know for certain that once we begin to start, verse 40, none of these can refer to Antiochus because it doesn't describe his life. It goes to the Antichrist itself. And we know by the end of it in Daniel 12, what event closes all this out? The resurrection of the dead. And when does the resurrection of the dead happen? At the end of history. So this is where you're getting this starting point right here, verse 36 forward, to the end of 12:3. They go together. And what you're going to see at the end of that is a prediction of the Great Tribulation, a prediction of the resurrection of the dead. You're going to see within this a quick prediction of the Battle of Armageddon and a prediction of the second coming of Christ that is going to destroy the Antichrist. All right? We're also going to do something I don't like doing, but since you've hung in there with me, we are going to play the What If This Is Talking About Today game, and are any nations or things possibly fitting in it? Now, I'm not telling you this is not going to happen, but everyone else can do it. We might as well do it too. Okay? So we'll play that game for a minute once we get to verse 40 through 45. All right? In the meantime, read for us verse 36 through 39.
And the king shall do as he wills. He shall exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak astonishing things against the God of gods. He shall prosper till the indignation is accomplished, for what is decreed shall be done. He shall pay no attention to the gods of his fathers, or to the one who be beloved by women. He shall not pay attention to any other god, for he shall magnify himself above all. He shall honor the God of fortresses instead of these. A God whom his fathers did not know, he shall honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He shall deal with the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. Those who acknowledge him he shall load with honor. He shall make them rulers over many, and shall divide the land for a price.
The help of the foreign god is probably Satan, by the way, and I'll just say that to you real quick. The help, and it could be in various forms. I mean, at this point, if you want to talk about aliens coming down and him doing that, I'm fine with that. I don't care at this point. But that's talking about Satan empowering him. What we see for certain right here is he's going to be unstoppable, at least at first. He does as he wills. He's going to view himself as God. Some people say he's an atheist. Well, if you view yourself as God, are you really an atheist?
Yeah,
I mean, you're really not an atheist if you view yourself as God. So he's got a God, all right, himself. All right, one way or another. He will stand vehemently against Jesus Christ and all Jesus Christ stands for. He will be dedicated to military might, and he will reward those who fall under his headship. All that's clear from that right there. We know for a fact that's what that's talking about, no doubt. All of that matches our studies in Revelation as well. He's going to think he's a God. Revelation 13. He's going to have the capability to have a pseudo-resurrection. You know, they're going to make a statue talk, and it's going to be connected, false religion, to the economy, and he's going to run things. You're going to bow down to him or die in the name of Jesus Christ, but you can't live in this world and serve Jesus at the same time. That is guaranteed in Revelation 13. All of this is looking forward to all this. All right? Now, we're going to pick up apocalyptic language in verse 40 through 45. Like I said, we have no idea what this means. I'm not going to lie to you. But since you've been bearable with me, we are going to play the let's sell a book and what this might could mean. And I'm going to tell you, it really could mean these things. But I'm not telling you really what it means. We're just going to play that game for a minute, okay? All right, read verse 40 through 45.
At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, but the king of the north shall rush upon him like a whirlwind, with chariots and horsemen, with many ships. And he shall come into countries, and shall overflow and pass through. He shall come into the glorious land, and tens of thousands shall fall. But these shall be delivered out of his hand, Edom and Moab, and the main part of the Ammonites. He shall stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall become a ruler of the treasures of gold and of silver, and all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Cushites shall follow in his train. But news from the east and the north shall alarm him, and he shall go out with a great fury to destroy and devote many to destruction. And he shall pitch his palatial tents between the sea and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end with none to help him.
All right, we do know at the end of verse 45 for certain that's the second coming of Christ. That's how he gets defeated. Now let's play that. We will write a book game. And this is all feasible, honestly. Okay? Now I'm not saying this is how it is because this is apocalyptic language, and how much can we know? Not so much because it's all speculative. But let's play this game for a minute. All right? Verse 40, we all of a sudden seemingly see the king of the south and the king of the north come together. Let's put this in modern day terms. Who's the king of the south again? Who has it been? Egypt, Ptolemaic, okay? So now we're going to look at, in modern day terminology, someone down in the Africa range itself, a kind of an Arabic Muslim coalition to your south. The Sudanese, the Muslim Egyptians, all these people in Africa that are Muslim themselves. Who has been the king of the north the entire time? Syria. In modern day terms, what religion dominates Syria? Muslim. So you've got the king of the south and the king of the north, two Muslim-dominated territories coming together. What is the one other religion that will not bow down to any other form of religion except their own beside Christianity? The Muslims. What is the one thing they would join forces for? Someone who comes in and threatens their religion as a whole. So if you've got Egypt or the Arabic coalition to the south, and Syria, ISIS, and all of them coming together, what do you have with the king of the north and the king of the south there? One great Islamic coalition. But this great Islamic coalition goes against the Antichrist, and what happens to them? They get squashed. All right? You like this game so far? Because that's all this is a game, but it's still possible. All right? Now, what we're going to see right here is once this Islamic coalition gets squashed, which, by the way, 42 and 43, we're going to talk about it, the glorious land itself means what's going to happen is he's going to come somewhere in the Middle East near Israel and begin to take this over. However, Edom, Moab, the Ammonites, they won't get threatened. They'll probably join forces with him. That is going to be the East Bank in Palestine or Jordan. We'll probably join forces with him, one way or another, okay? So we've got them taken care of. We've got the Islamic coalition. We've got, at least around Israel, we've got the East Bank taken care of. They're going to probably join with him at this point in time. But in verse 42 and 43, there's going to be three nations that he will beat. And because of that, he's getting great wealth, all right? These three nations right here are going to be Egypt, Libya, and a lot of your translations either have Ethiopia or the Cushites. Who is that really in modern day terms? Sudan. All right. So what you've got here is defeating of Egypt, Libya, and Sudan and becoming wealthy. What one natural resource do they have over in that area? Oil. So how would you get wealthy? Controlling oil. All right. So he's going to control the Middle East. He's going to be friends with the people of Palestine. He's already defeated the Islamic coalition, which, by the way, who runs the oil right now? The Islamic coalition. But once they're defeated, can they? No. So he's carrying this wealth after these great victories themselves. But in verse 45, what's going to happen? He is going to come into an area of a great mountain, Mount Zion, between Jerusalem and the seas, the Mediterranean Sea, which is somewhere in Palestine, with a great battle itself, which what great battle is predicted at the end of time? Revelation 16, the Battle of Armageddon. Or the Valley of what? Megiddo. So we've got a prediction right there. Once he showed up the Valley of Megiddo, he's showing up to make war. He's showing up to one last great stand. And in the end, this one last great stand happens. But in the end, he will what? Be defeated. When do we know for certain the Antichrist is defeated? The second coming of Jesus Christ in Revelation 19. That's what all of this is talking about right here. All right? Now, I can't tell you that's what that first part was talking about. That's just me playing the game with you because you've paid attention all this time. But that last part, that is 100% what it's talking about. The Battle of Armageddon and his ultimate defeat by the ultimate king, the true Christ. Everything he wants to be, he's defeated by. So we see this take place right here. And last but not least, Daniel 12, 1 through 3.
At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will rise. There will be a time of distress such as had not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt.
Stop there. That's all I care about. We got Michael the great prince, the archangel who protects your people. This is when he was over Israel, but now over the people of God, all Christians. This is talking about him taking part in the battle itself, which will be a spiritual war just as much as anything else. This will be a great time of distress. It's not happened from the beginning. What is the greatest time of distress ever predicted in the Bible? The Great Tribulation. We've got it predicted right here. However, in the end of the Great Tribulation, what will happen? All those who are asleep, they're not napping, they're what? They're dead. But they're going to what? From the dust what? Be awakened. They're going to rise. Talking about what? The resurrection of the dead. So all of this takes place in one final swoop. All of this predicted way back when by a guy named Daniel, before we've heard any of it. Now, how accurate was he about all the stuff we went back on? How accurate will he be about all the stuff still to come? This is why we studied this such in detail. This is why we're so certain. And this is why we serve the God we serve. He's in control.
Amen.
No matter how you want to look at it, he's worthy. And he just proved himself as worthy by showing us all this. All right? Do you have any questions?
I have a question about
Sure.
those extra biblical books you talked
Sure.
about, the first and second Maccabees.
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that at all.
They are Jewish texts, and they were never considered canon or scripture by the Jews, but they are by the Catholics. All right? Now, first Maccabees is simply Jewish history. But it's anytime you read history, you're going to read it slanted from one side. And so it's history from the Jewish perspective. So all the Jews that are what they agreed on are good, and all the people that persecute them are bad. But it's fairly accurate for history. Second Maccabees, I wouldn't take it for, a lot, okay? Because you got these ideas coming there. One of my big faults with it is it seems to word as Jeremiah coming back from the dead as an angel. And nowhere in true Orthodox Christianity do the dead become angels. They're separate beings. Matter of fact, the only cultish idea that supports that are Mormons. And so that is not true at all. And so you're going to have things like that happen in Second Maccabees that I just can't trust. So there's a reason why I didn't make the Bible. God didn't want it. But second, it's just not trustworthy. Other books you will see. Just certain Jews is all I know. That's all I can tell you on that. I can try to find out who the traditional authors are. But you can go online and find them all. And if you were to open up an Apocrypha Catholic Bible, they'd be in there. So they're part of it, along with the book of Tobit, which has got another story about an angel named Raphael. Now, there's another extra biblical book you will hear in the Bible that was very popular during Christian times. That's not in the Bible, named First Enoch. It is a good book to study, but remember, it's not biblical, and there's a reason for it. It was not written by Enoch, although it has his name, the guy before the flood. It was actually written around the time this great persecution of the Jews were happening, and it was a way to explain why all this bad stuff was happening, and it began to truly understand the activity of demons. Okay? And what First Enoch does is it goes back and it takes the biblical story of Genesis 6, of the fallen angels with women and the giants and the pre-flood world, and it takes that legitimate biblical story and it expands it tremendously to where you've got 200 fallen angels coming down under the leadership of Shemyaza and Azazel. They come down on Mount Hermon and they make a pact that they're going to basically run the world with these women, and their children become giants, and they become these hybrids that run around. Now, that is expanded, but the book itself was very popular during early Christian times. And the book itself was so popular, and it at least has some truth to it, that Jude quotes it in verse 15 through 16. And so we do know it was very popular in Christian circles. And 1 Enoch 6 through 11 does have enough reliability to be an expansion of a true biblical story of Genesis 6. So you will see this happen from time to time. Now, it is good to study these extra biblical books, but they are not in the Bible for a reason. They were never in the Bible, they've never been taken out of the Bible, and God never intended them to be in the Bible. And they can't add to salvation. They can just add to understanding that was going on during certain historical times. And it's fine to study them. I just warn, because I've got friends who study them as well, and I love 1 Enoch. It's one of my favorite books to read outside of Scripture. But I know it's not on par with 2 Peter and Jude. And I know it's not on par with Genesis. And I'm afraid there are certain people who read it because it's quoted and they go, see, it's been left out of the Bible. When I just can't trust everything that it says. Okay? And I'm even fine with the idea that 6 through 11 was a much older written material that possibly made it over the ark. That's fine. But anyway you look at it, it was never in the Bible to begin with, and God didn't intended for us to put it on par with that type of stuff. The same with 1 Maccabees and 2 Maccabees. It's information that can give us history of biblical things, or even between the Old and New Testaments, 1 and 2 Maccabees does, but it's never meant to be on par with Scripture itself. It's just meant to have historical contextual evidence to build up our knowledge in that area. So that's a very good question. So that gets into canon of Scripture. And just be rest assured that absolutely nothing was ever thrown out that should be in, and nothing's not in it that shouldn't be in. So just keep all that in mind. All right? Very good question. Anything else? You got it all right, Dennis?
I don't know.
All right, that's good. That's better than nothing. We'll take it. That will be the end of my Daniel